Welcome to the Values Exchange podcast. I'm Mike Cruz, your host, author of Saturday Every Day, private pilot, and CEO of North Texas Wealth Management, a firm dedicated to values-based financial planning. Hey, today we're speaking with Scott MacGregor. He's a guy very difficult to put in a box, very accomplished. He's the founder and CEO of Something New, LLC, founder of the Outlier Project and publisher and editor-in-chief of the Outlier magazine. He's a four-time author of the Standing O series, record 8-time winner of the American Business Award for Innovation. And he was also the chief revenue officer working with Fortune 500 and 1,000 companies, done a whole lot. But what really stands out, and today what we want to talk about, is the value of building genuine, impactful connections with influential people. Scott, welcome to the Values Exchange.
Mike, I am thrilled to be here. Couldn't be happier. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I got to tell you up front, one of my guests actually on the podcast introduced me to you, and it's, she was an influencer. I thought she knew everybody, but when she introduced me to you, she introduced you as the person that knows everyone. And, the more that I've gotten to know you, I think that's absolutely true. And so building, relationships that matter, impactful connections. I mean, you're the guy to talk to about this. So I'm excited to share all these lessons with our audience, because I know many times people think about, how do I expand my network? I want to be intentional about like friendships and maybe just being a better friend, especially when, life is so busy. And then maybe even how do I increase access to like very successful people and kind of believe in themselves that they have what it takes to really foster those relationships. And so I know that you have been very intentional about this. And so I'm excited to talk to you about it today.
Can't wait. Let's do it.
Yeah. So, you're great at these relationships. I just wanted to kind of get the backstory. Like, how did you get into being more focused on building friendships and these impactful people? I mean, at some point you started at zero. What was that catalyst to get you going?
Yeah, grew up poor in an affluent town, which is a weird way to grow up. And so I grew up wildly curious. I was curious just because I didn't understand how economically we were so different from everybody else, and just trying to figure the world out. By being curious, by asking a lot of questions to my friends' parents, I wound up developing friendships with people that were decades older than me. That curiosity stays with me today. And it's really helped forge unbelievable friendships with remarkable people. I think I did have an understanding, pretty early on in my business career, that if you wanted to do great things in the world, your ability to do those was in some ways predicated on the people you know. And the more people you know that have access and influence, the more things you're able to accomplish. So I set about figuring out how to do that, and I've been working on it for 20 plus years.
Yeah. So when you say the more people you know that have access, the more you can accomplish, where did you unlock that kind of wisdom, and how have you found that to be true?
It was just by being observant. I just saw, what people were able to accomplish in the world. And, the more you study those people that are making a big impact, it's because of the access that they have. So, I run a cohort called Who's Your Oprah, and the whole premise of that is Oprah Winfrey, to me, might be the gold standard. I feel like if anyone's phone rings anywhere in the world and it's Oprah Winfrey, people are going to take that call. So therefore, Oprah, because she has so much access, can really do whatever she wants to do. And if you want to do good things in the world, you've got to know people that have influence and access in order to do that.
Yeah. And I think, you have that curiosity, but I think what I've realized the most about you is how genuine you are. So that even if Oprah is your friend, you're not doing it because she's Oprah. You're just really genuine about that relationship. How do you do that? And maybe what's the advice for someone that is listening to this and saying, "Yeah, I got to expand my network, and who do I know that maybe has influence I want to meet?" How do they go about that in a genuine way, or how do you start to unlock that maybe fear of why would they want to be friends with me?
I mean, it all starts with mindset. I think most people, first, I don't like to use the word networking because I don't view it as networking. I view it as relationship building. I view it as building friendships. I don't really look at it as networking. Networking to me, just by nature, has kind of a transactional nature to it. And it means that you're looking to get something. The only thing that I'm ever looking to get is a friendship. Um, and that just comes from curiosity. I'm very, very curious, and I want to understand people's backstories, and I want to understand why they accomplished the things that they accomplished and how they accomplished the things that they accomplished. So it starts. You got to do a lot of homework. It amazes me how many people will jump on a Zoom call with somebody and have absolutely no idea anything about them, and that just doesn't make sense. So, in today's world, especially with social media, you should walk into every conversation with a ton of information on the people that you're going to be investing the next whatever it is, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, or whatever on a Zoom call. But most people just simply don't do that.
Yeah, so do the homework up front. So much available information. Why not start to learn about people? And like you said, it's just that natural curiosity of really genuinely wanting to know more about them. And I think it's easy for us to, spend so much time on ourselves. And you can hear that in conversations where someone says something and you say, "Oh, I went to the mountains too." And, instead of like, really leaning in and, "Oh, tell me about your trip to, going skiing," wanting to know more about it and being curious. I think you've always done a great job at that. So help me understand, like, unlock this like core philosophy that you have. It's, these relationships are so important to you. You do so well at that. How do you kind of frame that in your mind? How do you kind of stay focused in that and not go back to this? I call it the Scott show, right? How do you not kind of go back to what's important in your life, and how do you stay so focused on others?
Part of it's probably just DNA. I am genuinely very, very interested in other people. Um, I think you're wired, I don't know, let's just take, we're entering that time of season where it's holiday season, where gifts are exchanged. And I think you're either somebody who gets a lot of energy and excitement from getting gifts or giving gifts. I'm somebody who gets a ton of energy from giving gifts. So, um, I'm just hardwired, I think, that way to a degree. And that's probably why uh, it makes it very easy to develop these relationships because it comes from a very genuine place. There's no manipulation, there's no end game, there's no, I'm looking for this to become a business partner of mine or anything like that. It just comes from a very genuine place.
It's good. I think you shared the quote with me. The only thing that we get to take with us, when we go, are the investments we make in people along the way. And I just see that being true for everything that you do. What are
It's about impact. To me, it's
Yeah.
about impact. We all have to decide what kind of life we want to live. And I'm a believer that at the end of the day, no one's really going to care about the businesses I built. They're probably not going to care that much about the books that I've written. Um, they're certainly not going to care about the house I live in or the car I drive, but the impact that I make in the world, people are going to care about that, and that's going to be my legacy. So, that's what I think about all the time. And it just makes a huge difference. It's just how you wake up every day and what you focus on.
Yeah. So walk me through that. Give me some practical tips that maybe our listeners can apply if they're saying, okay, all this sounds good. I think I need to be more focused on that. I could do a better job. What does that look like when you say I do it every day? What are these steps that people can take to move that direction?
You'd have to go through a 4-day course to get all of that, but I will give you kind of a little bit of a Reader's Digest. I mean, it starts with just having a strategy. If you don't have a codified strategy for anything in your life, or especially in your business, it's very hard to execute at a high level. So if you ask most people, who are the 20 people that that know you, that have the highest access and influence, they have no idea. They might be able to think about it and come up with that list, but if you don't have the list, then you can't execute on strengthening those relationships every single day. So my recommendation is that you just take a simple sheet of paper and a pen and you write down, these are the 20 people who I know that know me, that have the most access and influence. And then what can I do every day to further those relationships? And when that's your focus is always on other people. It's not on yourself. And that's really where it all starts. It starts with that very, very basic concept of just knowing who those people are, because you can't consistently execute on anything that isn't written down.
Yeah, makes sense. So sitting down and actually taking the time, write down 20 names. I mean, that's an exercise that is very interesting because, it's like almost writer's block, right? You're like, oh my gosh, do I know anyone? And you tried to write down these 20 names, but that's amazing to be that intentional and focused on others. What do you think that mindset, you talk about, that intentionality and focus on others. So you've been doing this 20 years. From the beginning to now, how do you feel like your mindset has changed over that time?
I don't think my mindset's really changed that much. I've always just been more interested in other people than I am about myself. I'm more, if you had to classify me as an introvert or an extrovert, I'm probably more of an introvert. So I don't really, even though I've been, CEO of multiple companies and been in leadership positions, I don't really, love to be in the spotlight. I'm not seeking to be in the spotlight. I'd rather shine the spotlight on other people. I love highlighting other people. And that's why, whether it's, I run a community called the Outlier Project, and I get the opportunity to highlight 750 members in 35 different countries. And I get to highlight a lot of the amazing friends that I have that have done incredible things, whether that's, as a CEO or as a best-selling author or an Olympian or a pro athlete or a chef or an artist or whatever the case may be. It's just fun to highlight other people. So I don't know that it's evolved that much. The strategy of how to build those relationships has probably changed and gotten a little bit more nuanced over time. But the basic premise of how I think and what I value the most has really not changed very much in the decades that I've been, intensely focused on building really, really strong friendships.
Yeah, very good. So, you talk about this 4-day program, which I actually participated in, the Who's Your Oprah program that you're referring to. If you want to tell everybody a little bit more about that, I got a lot out of it. You gave us some books to read, some recommendations throughout the program itself. Tell us a little bit about that 4 days, maybe why somebody would be interested in attending and signing up for that program. I thought it was great.
Yeah, those relationships will change your life. You are one relationship away from your entire life changing forever. And people don't have a strategy for it. So that's simply what the cohort is all about. It's a small group setting where we teach all the fundamentals. Basically, I just give you the playbook that I've been using for 20, 25 years. It starts with mindset because if you don't have the right mindset, having all the tactical things like these are the things that I would do on a regular basis, it's not going to do you much good. You really have to understand why are you doing this and making sure that it aligns with your values. So 50% of the cohort is spent on that mindset and 50% is the tactical, practical. These are the things I do every single day to pour into the people that are the most impactful folks that I know.
Yeah. And I think for me, one of the amazing parts of attending that is really understanding maybe the mindset of giving a gift and being more intentional about it. And obviously, we read, giftology. But you're phenomenal at gift giving and being more intentional and not just saying, it's the thought that counts. Tell me a little bit more about like how you go about your gifting. It's so unique.
I think if you can play Santa Claus every day, that's a pretty cool way to live. So, based on my first name basis relationships I have with my local post office, I get to do that pretty much every day. So, I send stuff out. It doesn't, I think one of the mistakes that people make is they think gift giving, boy, that must cost a lot of money. That's not really true. My friend who wrote Giftology, John Rulin, the late great John Rulin, who unfortunately passed away a few months ago, he was well known for saying it's not the thoughtful gift that counts, it's the thoughtful thought that counts. And that's true. So you have to truly know somebody. So sending somebody, the proverbial biggest mistake everybody makes is they send people stuff with their company swag all over it. Nobody wants to be your walking billboard, but people want things that are meaningful to them. And what's meaningful, to Mike Cruz is going to be different from what's meaningful to somebody else. So maybe it's, a sweatshirt from your alma mater, SMU or BYU, where you got your undergrad, or maybe it's,
Yeah.
something to do with flying because you're a private pilot. You know, you've got to really get to know people in order to give those thoughtful gifts that mean something to them.
Yeah.
I remember very early on when I was a chief revenue officer, we were focused on Fortune 1000 companies and in many cases, CIOs and CFOs. And we would take them out to very expensive dinners in New York City. And it's not that they didn't appreciate them, they certainly did, but they had been to every nice restaurant and they had been wined and dined in that manner before. I have a neighbor who happens to be a very famous author. Her name is Leslie Connor. And I distinctly remember one of my clients had a bunch of kids. She had just written a bestseller. And I went up to Leslie's house and I said, could you sign these books and put an inscription in that I could give it to this CIO? And that $14 book nearly brought him to tears. And I used to get pictures and videos and things like that of him reading that book to his children. So a $14 book, had way more impact than the $300 dinner, only because of its thoughtfulness.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up that example. I mean, the person that introduced me to you had just mentioned she was in cooking, enjoyed cooking and kind of did a online cooking lesson and such. And she's like, and then this, great book from a famous French, chef shows up, where he had personalized it and written inside the book. And so what's fascinating is I think you do stuff like that, but you're doing it every day. You're doing it all day, every day. And just the creativeness of the gifts that you give, it's truly unique. And I think it's a good reminder for all of us that, being more intentional, maybe taking that time to make someone else's day and give that gift, like you said, Christmas every day, is pretty fascinating. What other book recommendations, if you had to kind of steer somebody into, learning more about this subject, obviously attending your program, but is there a certain book that you would recommend? Any favorites?
The best book you can buy, in my estimation, is Giftology by John Ruhlin.
Okay.
It's a game changer. Most people will read it and go, "Oh my God, I've been doing this my entire life, and I've been doing it wrong."
Okay.
It's very, very eye-opening. That's the best book that I can think of. There are a lot of books on networking. There's really no book that's written that I know of that's been written specifically about how to build high impact, high access relationships. That's a book that someday maybe I'll put out in terms of just the curriculum that we teach in the cohort. But it's so impactful. It literally will change your life if you follow the recipe. But like anything, it takes effort. It takes a certain mindset. And most people don't have the discipline or don't have the proper mindset to execute on it. But if you do, it'll literally change your life.
Oh, that's great. So I do want to kind of focus on your background for a second, the literal background in your video feed here. So you have the Outlier project, these covers, kind of your series and your book. Can you kind of reference what's directly behind you? It's a fascinating background. It's different from anybody else's. What are we looking at there?
A whole bunch of stuff. So I've got 4 books. So when I started my company, Something New, 10 years ago, giving back to me was one of the most important things that I wanted to be in the DNA of the company. But I had a very big problem. The problem was I'm an absolute control freak, and I did not want to take any outside funding. I didn't want to take any VC money to help build the business because I wanted to control, the decisions that were made, and I didn't want any outside influence dictating that. So when you're in that situation and you're bootstrapping a business, you're pouring every dollar you're making back into the business. So it's very hard to write big checks to organizations that you care about. So I had to really sit down and think, like, what are my assets? Because my assets were not a giant bank account where I could just write these big checks. And I realized that my assets were these unbelievable friendships that I built over decades. So I asked 52 of my friends if they would write a chapter of gratitude for a life lesson learned, and I'd put it in a book, and I'd give 100% of the proceeds to charity. So Dick Vermeil, who won a Super Bowl with the Rams and is in the Football Hall of Fame, he wrote the foreword. Tiki Barber, who's an all-time great running back for the New York Giants, wrote the cover quote. And then Jesse Itzler and a whole bunch of other folks wrote incredible chapters of gratitude for life lessons learned. And we gave all the money to charity. I realized I had more than 52 friends, so I did it again in a book called Standing O Encore. And then I have a huge affinity for the military, so I wrote a book called Standing O Salute. And then I wrote a book called Standing O Tribute. And then we've got a 5th book coming out this year. So it's just been my way of giving back. So you can see the 4 books behind me. And then directly behind me is a painting from his name in the art world is KW. His name is Kyle Wallach, and he's done stuff for Cardi B and Missy Elliott and all kinds of people. But he's a phenomenal artist, and he calls his art refined graffiti. And I have a mantra for, I would say my life, but certainly for my businesses, and it's people over everything. So I had asked him if he would create a painting, and that's what you're seeing directly behind me is a people over everything KW original.
Man, that's great. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And, like I said in the beginning, you're a difficult person to put in the box because, you do so much, and these books and you're charitable and just valuing the relationships at a different level. You had told me the quote, relationships are always worth the work they require. And, I think that's just a great kind of reflection on really valuing these relationships so much more than things. And I think if you ask anybody, they say that they do, but we don't necessarily live it every day. And it's a good reminder to, look for those gifting opportunities and really valuing the connections and relationships around us. Closing advice for anybody that kind of gets the bug, wants to move forward, kind of being more intentional about this. Where do they go from here, or what advice do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to really know where you want to go in your life, what's important to you, and then how you want to show up in the world. And I think if you want to show up differently, if you want to do great things, pouring into people and relationships and friendships is what it's all about. Certainly, we think the cohort is very, very unique. I don't think there's another curriculum that's being taught like that out there. So I don't do that program that often. I do it a few times a year because I want to keep small groups, and I don't have the time to do it as much as I would like. But that's certainly a resource on a grander scale. The Outlier project that I run is very, very focused on kind of a people over everything mantra, and really pouring into people and supporting them in any way that you can. So, those are two different things that people could get involved with. But I think, where you spend your time is really what you value. And to your earlier point, people talk sometimes a good game, but at the end of the day, if you're not spending time, if you're not carving out time to do these things, to build relationships and to pour into other people, then it's truly not a value, because, where you spend your time is really what you value.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, you're doing it right. I think the gifts you give, you talk about being 101, very unique, and of course, Outlier and being different. You're living it every day, but obviously you're 101, Scott. I appreciate you calling me a friend, and appreciate you being on the Values Exchange. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate you, my friend.
All right.
So thank you for having me, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Sounds good. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Values Exchange podcast. Hopefully we've given you some tactics that you can go apply and be more intentional and building better connections and relationships with others. Thanks.